Coach Gene Clemens here, and this really came about as a genesis. I was sitting back and I had purchased the new book by our former president, Barack Obama, um, A Promised Land. And it got me thinking about all of the books that I've read about leaders and how I've tried to take something from each book that I've read about leaders and how they lead and what their ultimate goal is in leading and what motivates them. And I was like, man, I know a lot of coaches do this. I know a lot of coaches read books from leaders to learn more about leadership. How should they better lead? How to better lead. It doesn't necessarily have to be from football or from basketball or whatever. They just want to read about leaders. I know a lot of people have read The Art of War. A lot of people in sports have read The Art of War. A lot of people have read the book by Tony Dungy about leadership, even though they may not be football coaches. And so I thought it would be really good, really interesting to do a book review. When I bought the book, then I realized that the book was over 700 pages long and essentially 23 hours of audiobook, which I am doing because, like most coaches, I'm trying to, do multiple things at once. And so I was like, you know what? It might be fun to break this down piece by piece. So I'm going to go through this book and you're going to experience this book with me. We'll call this the book club, and do this maybe once a year or a couple times a year where we break down a book and I bring it to you chapter by chapter and give you what my understanding of the book, what I got from the book, from someone that I admire as a leader, and how I implement or just relate my experiences and what I've been through to what they've been through, how I can take parts of what they've done as leaders and implement them into what I do, and hopefully you get something out of it as well. Just in the preface, President Obama says some things that I am really, really interested in. First off, let me just tell you, this is not a political thing for me at all. This is me looking at him as being one of the leaders that I think was one of our best leaders that we've had, and looking at his experiences and thinking about what I feel about them. And so there were a couple things, and I wrote them down because I wanted to make sure I remembered them when I came back to him. One of the first things that he says in the preface, that even though he felt like trepidation because the president that was taking over for him was diametrically opposed to everything he stood for, that he believed he left the country better than what it had been when he started. He didn't go into more details after that, but I would have loved to have asked the question, how? How was it better? What exactly do you feel that you've done to make the country better than the country you took over? Because the argument for a lot of people is that, while I agree with him, I think the country was better than what he took over. So many of the things that he admittedly wanted to do and failed at, or had ambition to do and failed at, didn't actually happen. And he admits to those things in the preface. And I would just like to know how. Like, how was the country better when you took over? I'm sorry, when you left it, than how it was when you took over. So it was one of the things that I wish he had expounded on. But again, we're talking about 700 pages. And there's an opportunity, because this goes through his first term in office, that he's going to answer those questions at some point. This was the big thing for me. He said, I've had to ask myself whether I was too tempered in speaking the truth as I saw it, too cautious in either word or deed, convinced as I was that by appealing to what Lincoln called the better angels of our nature, I stood a greater chance of leading us in the direction of the America we've been promised. Okay, so essentially you're saying that you should have said more. Or you're saying that you don't know. Because that's the next sentence. I mean, the next sentence he says is, I don't know. But what I do know is I believe. He believes in that ideal of America. But what I want to know is, what would you have said if you had an opportunity to not care? Because I believe that image is everything. President Obama has constructed an image, and it would have taken him to almost come out of character in order for him to say maybe what he wanted to say. And I would love to know, what is it, President Obama, that you really wanted to say? What is it that you've thought about and that you haven't had an opportunity to say while sitting here and observing everything that's happened over the last 4 years? These are things that are really, really interesting to me. How he talked about the way he felt as he left the Oval Office and got on the Air Force One for the last time, rediscovering the love that he had with his wife, the First Lady, Michelle Obama. So rediscovering, does that mean it was lost? Does that mean it went somewhere? These are all the things that I want to that I want answered. These are the questions that I want answered, and I'm wondering, does he answer them in the future? We will see. It's an interesting thing when I think about him as a leader versus what we as coaches do as a leader. We spend so much time focused in on football or basketball or whatever your sport is that you coach, that we sometimes neglect the other side. After the season is over, coaches, and please leave a comment. Do you feel like you have to rediscover the love with your wife or with your significant other because you just haven't spent a lot of time together? Or have you found that healthy balance to be able to know, okay, well, we're going into the season and I know I have to be able to still do this with my family, and I can't just wait until the end of the season? Or is it one of those things where, you know what, at the end of the season, we catch up on everything, but they know that once the season hits, it's football, basketball, baseball, track, whatever it is that's your narcotic that you get caught up in throughout the year. So a very interesting preface. I think it actually sets the tone because the preface is like 10, 15 minutes long. And so if the preface is 10, 15 minutes long, we know that we're going to get long chapters. This is a 700-page book and a 23-hour-long audiobook. So I'm really excited. I'm excited to bring this to you and my thoughts on it. I'm interested to share. I don't know how well this is going to do, how many people are going to look at it. And quite honestly, it's okay if it's only a few. But I want to have these conversations because I think this is very important in our world as coaches to be able to look at leaders and how people lead and what motivated them to be leaders, to see if there are some things that are correlations between us as leaders and the people that we may admire outside of our field. So until tomorrow, I'm Coach Gene Clemens. This has been part one, the preface.